Alright, you should first diagnose the problem and make sure your battery is good and charged, and make sure the relay is working properly. And if you're convinced that it's your starter, then here's a step-by-step walkthrough. Hey, most of these Chevy pick-me-up trucks are the same if you're running a V8 in your truck, though there are some subtle differences between models, but the basics are all the same. And you want to disconnect the battery. And now you want to locate the starter. You're going to crawl up under the passenger side front. And before dropping the starter, you should gain access to the solenoid, and on these Silverados, the best way to do it is to take off this front wheel. And disconnect the solenoid wires. There's two of them. And right behind the wheel, we see that heat shield and those spark plug wires to gain access to the spark plugs. Right underneath that, we see part of the front frame, and right underneath that, we see a piece of the solenoid. Right there, we can barely see in that. And here we see a much better look at this. I already took the wire off of here because it didn't have a nut on it and was just riding on that post right there. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either, but it was barely touching it, and that's probably one reason why this solenoid burned out. So you should have two nuts on both of those posts, two nuts each, and one goes in back of the wire and one goes in front of the wire. The top one, the big one, is 1/2 inch, but you can get away with 13 millimeter. And the little one on the right there is, you can use an 8 millimeter or a 3/8. Both will work. And once you get the wires off the solenoid, it's time to crawl back under and remove the two starter bolts holding it into the block. And these are 9/16. And now we're just going to drop it out of there and wiggle it out. And now that we have the starter out, we have a lot more room to see what's going on. So examine the wires and make sure there's no burnt or exposed wires. It's also a good time to check the flywheel. Although you won't be able to see too much of it, you will be able to tell if it's in good shape or bad shape, and this one looks fine. And now that you have the old starter out, it's a good idea to take a really good look at it and see what may have gone wrong here. On this post, you can see that we have a burn spot, and that's because it didn't have a nut on it holding it down. and it was having a lot of trouble making a decent connection. You can also see that this solenoid is all, burned up, and there's no doubt in my mind that there's nothing wrong with the actual starter. I just need a solenoid, but I'm going to replace the whole thing while I have it out. These starter bolts holding the starter to the block were a little bit more difficult than they should have been to get out, so to make it a little bit easier on the next guy, I'm going to lube them up and let them sit for a little while. And once you have the new starter, it's a good idea to take a good look at it and see if it's the right one, number one, and see if everything matches up right. This one came with a shim, and usually if an old shim didn't come out with your old starter, you won't need this new shim. That's it right there, and is it necessary or is it not? It's debatable. If you have any problems when you put the new starter in, you might want to consider sticking that shim in there, but I don't think you're going to have any problems. This little nut was a little bit harder to get off than it should have been, which makes me question the quality of this thing. That should just be hand tight. You should be able to take them straight off like that one there. And we're going to install the new starter, and we're going to crawl back under there and line it up and tighten her on up. And once you have the starter all tightened down, it's back up under the wheel well, and you can barely see me slipping a wire right on that post. And now it's time to slip the other one on and tighten up the nut. I know this view is not very good. I'll try to get you a better one here in a second. Yeah, that's better. You can see I didn't put the nuts on yet. I'm trying to find a way to get this camera view and still be able to tighten it up. The problem is the camera gets in the way of my hand, and you really just can't see anything except the back of my hand. But you get the gist. You have, two nuts, and one's a little bigger than the other one, and just tighten those down the best you can. It's going to be a tight little squeeze for you, but you can do it. Yeah, it's time to hook the battery back up. And you may have noticed when this video first started that I had the negative side was on the side post and the positive side was on the top post. And I've been meaning to get to this, so I figured now would be the time, and I converted it, the negative cable back up to top post. I don't like side post batteries, never did. But all that is beside the point. We're going to go ahead and see if this car starts up and if everything is actually fixed. Yep, you should always put your wheel back on.